Geography, and today we're doing a masterclass on assess and evaluate questions. These are the questions that kind of spook kids. In reality, they're difficult. They really, really are. This is where your levels 9, 8, and 7 are kind of decided. But remember, if you can kind of score 50, 60%, 70% on these, you're doing really good. And then back it up with really strong explain questions and describe questions. You'll get a good mark, okay? So today we'll break down kind of what we need to do with assess questions. These are my kind of key thoughts on what I think are really the most important things that you need to do when you're doing an assess question. For me, it's 1 point per paragraph. You don't have to write in paragraphs, but forever since I was doing my GCSEs and my A-levels, I was writing 1 point per paragraph, and I was developing them with my connectives. Okay, it just provides your writing with a lot of structure, and it allows you to write deeper, and that's where the high AO3 marks are, in that deepened writing. I'd say each paragraph you write needs to have a case study in it, and that case study should be backed up with some data. Judgments throughout, you should be saying if this is significant or insignificant or somewhat significant. You must be making judgments as you go, otherwise you simply cannot access those higher marks. This is actually really easy to do, and I'll show you the hacks to do it today. Introduction is optional. If you're running out of time, don't do it. Conclusion is essential. I've been marking for 8 years now, and I've never once seen a mark scheme that says award marks for an introduction. I have seen mark schemes, pretty much every one, that says a sustained conclusion. Okay, so be aware of that. So let's get into it. What I'll do now is I will do one, then we will do one, and then you will do one. Okay, so let's get stuck into it. So first of all, bug the question. Doesn't matter whether it's a 2-mark explain question or an 8-marker. Break the question down. Assess is the command word. Reasons, countries, vulnerable, cyclones. Okay? So I know this country really is about why are some countries more vulnerable than others to cyclones. Glance at the marks and see it's an 8-marker. Often these assess questions will be 12 markers, and that 4 marks will come for spelling, punctuation, and grammar. This is not the case for this question. So pause and read this. This is what a level 3 full marks is kind of, this is what examiners are told a candidate must look like if they are to award 7 or 8 marks. Accurate understanding of concepts. So do you know your geography? Applies understanding and deconstructs information. This is AO3. This is where you're going deeper into your understanding of the subjects. Well-balanced argument. Synthesized coherently, so that's again, is it well structured? Connectives. Judgments. Again, if you do not have the judgments, the examiner cannot award you more than 7. Okay, so you need the judgments, otherwise you're getting a maximum of 6. Okay, so what it says is we need good geographical information, AO2, we need it well written and deepened in AO3 with judgments. So this is kind of the AO2. These are the kind of points you could make. So again, I would pause this and I'd have a read. Remember the questions about vulnerability and cyclones. Pause this. These are basically your points that you could write paragraphs on. Okay, assuming that you've paused and read that, let's jump into the AO3. And again, here, judgments, judgments, judgments. And look, they want some data. They want some depth of your writing, but it's judgments, judgments, and judgments that really jumps out to me when I read that. Okay, so let's get cracked into this. And if you want to pause and read this, of course you can. So this is the overall structure of what I would be encouraging my students to get to by the end of that 8-mark question. Okay, this is tough. Roughly you've got 10 minutes to do this. It's a really, really tough thing to do. Okay. Introduction. Scrap it if you're running out of time. Paragraph 1, paragraph 2, conclusion. There should be line breaks between each of these. Okay, that shows the examiner very visually on your page. Here's the end of my first point. Here's the start of my second point. So use your line breaks. Don't use indents. Use line breaks. sounds simple, but I genuinely believe every time I marked a piece of GCSE exam work, as soon as I saw a kid leaving line breaks and writing paragraphs, I knew that kid was going to do well. Okay, so let's get into it then. This is the introduction. Cyclones are large areas of low pressure that form in the tropics when ocean temperatures reach 26.5. So my kind of hack for writing an introduction is just choose a word from the question and just define it. Okay, that's it. And keep it light. You don't get any marks for this, so whilst it's a good habit, it's not essential. And then you're just dropping in a few key terms: low pressure, tropics, ocean temperature. Very solid introduction. Okay? Now, as quickly as you can, you should be getting onto your first paragraph. Now, here are my connectives. My point will be here, and I'll use reason. One reason is, and then I will develop it. Okay? Because, for example, this means that, as a result, and however. And here is when this means that, as a result, and however, that's when I'm really getting into those AO3 marks. And I want to try and end with a judgment or start with a judgment. Okay, and I'll show you how I do that. So, one highly significant reason is this is a judgment, highly significant. I could have said somewhat significant, so kind of think, in the middle, or one insignificant reason. I've gone with highly, saying it's very, very important. That is a judgment. That is AO3, and that's showing to the examiner I should be getting that level 3, 7, and 8. One highly significant reason is a country's level of development. This is my point, level of development. Some countries are rich and some countries are poor. The richer countries are obviously better at responding, okay? But I'm actually going to talk here about buildings, because buildings in developing countries are often made with poor quality materials. So I'm saying, again, if this is a developing country, it's going to have poor quality building materials. For example, so this is when I need a bit of a case study. And here, for example, in Jamaica, over 20% of homes in low-income areas are built with wood, metal sheets, or other lightweight materials that can easily be damaged or destroyed by strong winds and flooding during cyclones. So this is kind of AO3 and AO2 because I have good, solid information. 20% of homes in low-income areas are built with wood and metal sheets. But my AO3 comes in the second half of this sentence when I'm saying can be easily damaged or destroyed by strong winds, by flooding, and by cyclones. And this is when I go further into that depth. This means that, so now I'm not talking about Jamaica anymore. I've moved on, I'm zoomed out, and I'm back to talking about development and cyclones and building quality. When a cyclone hits, houses are more likely to collapse, leading to injury, death, and displacement. As a result, communities in these areas struggle to recover and rebuild after disasters. However, however means a change in direction. Generally, we think of it as about being balanced, okay? So what can I do to stop this being the case? However, if stronger and more cyclone-resistant building materials were used, the damage and impact could be significantly reduced. So I'm saying again, it's significant. That word significant is so important for judgments. I'm saying, look, this is highly significant. But if they developed more cyclone-resistant buildings materials, it would be it would no longer be significant and it would be insignificant. Okay, that's the end of my first paragraph. So now I'm going to jump into the second one. Again, if I'm going quickly, I'm sorry. Maybe slow down the YouTube speed. Paragraph 2, low-lying countries. So low-lying means close to sea level. All right. So this is something I think is also significant, but different. So set a new paragraph, a line break and a new paragraph. One somewhat significant reason is low-lying countries are vulnerable to cyclones is because they are at greater risk of flooding from storm surges. Again, guys, this video is not about content. This is literally just about exam techniques. So I hope you know what storm surges are. But they attack and they roll in and they destroy, almost like mini tsunamis, if you will, low-lying areas on coastal villages. For example, Bangladesh is mostly flat and close to sea level. Complex sentence. Which means that when a cyclone strikes, large areas can be quickly flooded. I should have some data in here, so that's what I would be criticizing myself for. Something like 20% of people in Bangladesh live within 2 meters of sea level, which I think that is true. This means that, so again, I'm not talking about Bangladesh, and I'm zooming back out to just being talking about low-lying countries and cyclones. This means that homes, roads, and farmland may be submerged, lovely use of Tier 2 language, causing the loss of life, damage of property, and disruption of food supplies. Can I go further? As a result, the recovery can take a long time and people may be forced to leave their homes. Yep. However, with better flood defences and early warning systems, the impact of cyclones can be reduced. Again, that's nice. I'm balancing there, but I don't see much of a judgment in here. So, but remember, I'm covered because at the start of my paragraph, I said a somewhat significant reason. Now, somewhat is like your middle, not too hot, not too cold. It's not insignificant and it's not highly significant. I don't actually believe that at all. I believe this is an incredibly significant factor, but I'm trying to show the examiner that I've been able to rank them, because I'm a high ability student, I've been able to rank them into highly significant and somewhat significant. Okay? So I'm kind of playing the exam game here. One somewhat significant reason is. And then that's it. It should be a line break and jump into your conclusion. And again, in your conclusion, you don't do anything crazy. It is simply, in conclusion, it could be assessed. If this was an evaluate question, you would simply change it to it could be evaluated. Whilst both level of development and low-lying land are significant, so I'm saying, yep, both are important, so that's a judgment, it is a country's level of development that is the most significant. So again, I'm ranking them, aren't I? I'm saying, yep, both significant, but that level of development is the most significant, as they can respond in ways that developing countries simply cannot. Okay, I'm saying money allows more options to respond. Okay, nothing crazy in here, just acknowledging, telling the examiner it's a conclusion and I'm doing some assessment and here my final judgments. And that's it. Again, to do that in 10 minutes, incredibly difficult, but you've got to fly. So in reality, these paragraphs are probably a little bit too long for what you can actually produce. Okay? But that is the pretense. And if you do take this subject to A-levels, not much changes. You know, if you can write an 8 marker at GCSE, you're in a good place for your A-levels for sure. Okay, now we're going to jump into the we do. So we're going to try and do this together. So I would suggest pausing the video, go walk around wherever you are, go get a glass of water and come back. You'll need a pen and paper for this. What will happen, I don't know if you've seen my other videos on exam technique, but I will give you a sentence and you will write the next sentence and then you'll compare your sentence to what I wrote, okay? They can absolutely be different, but see if it has the same feeling as your writing. So again, be writing as I do this. So let's start. Assess, this question has stayed the same. It's still on cyclones. It's still on vulnerability. This time we're going to talk about the strength of the cyclone. So basically wind speed. So one reason is the strength of cyclones. Because, pause the video now and try and finish the sentence by saying because. So start writing by saying because, and then tell me why strength of the cyclone is important. Okay, I will assume that you pause the video and you're done, and we will continue. Because the stronger the wind speeds, the more likely it is that damage will be significant. So there's that word significant again. Yep. Wind speed, more wind, stronger winds equals more damage. Simple. Now, for example, this will be our case study. So again, you probably learned different case studies. So it doesn't matter if it's different. If you have got a case study on cyclones, try and write, for example, and have a go at writing a sentence that hopefully includes some data, and then we'll compare it to mine now. So pause the video. Okay, let's continue. For example, Cyclone Amphan struck parts of Bangladesh in 2020, reached wind speeds of up to 240 kilometers an hour and caused widespread damage. So next comes as a result, and this means that. So pause the video, try and write an as a result. So huge winds, well, what's going to happen if huge winds going to take place? You tell me, okay? Have a go, write it, and see and compare it to what I've written. Okay, pause the video. Okay, let's continue. This means that even well-prepared areas can suffer major destruction, especially if infrastructure is weak. So I'm saying, look, you can be as ready as you want for a cyclone and a hurricane, but sometimes, you know, in America we call it an act of God. Yep, that's what they say in their insurance stuff. 240 miles an hour is an act of God. There's not much humans can do to stop that, okay, even if you are prepared, especially if there's weak infrastructure. So, was that similar? As a result, we want to link this, we want to get to the AO3, so let's go for as a result. See if you can do an as a result sentence now. Pause the video. Okay, let's continue. As a result, communities may experience loss of life, economic damage, and long-term displacement. At this point, you've got so much that you can potentially write about. If you're not writing about the same as me, it's absolutely fine, okay? But does it feel like, am I developing on what I'm saying? Am I connecting different ideas like communities, loss of life, the economy, refugees? Like, am I bringing in these things? Okay, then as a result, we then finish with however. Let's see if we can get some balance, go maybe a little bit more evaluation and judgment. However, stronger buildings and better emergency planning could help reduce the damage caused by cyclones. Was that similar to your however? Now, one mistake I've made in this paragraph is that I don't have the judgment up here. Okay, so look, even I forget this. One reason is why I could say one insignificant, I could say one somewhat significant, or I could say one highly significant. Okay, so don't forget, like I just did, don't forget your judgments, because that is what pushes you to the level 3, the 7 to 8. Okay, so that is our we do. I don't know if you could please give me some comments in the video if you think this we do works. I have no idea. I've never done it before. So if you want to post your we do's in the comment section as well, do that, and I'll get back to you with a bit of feedback. Okay. Now you've got to do your own one. This is the you do. So remember, these videos are not about content; they are about exam skills. So I've completely changed the topic. This question's from Geography A at Excel, Paper 2, Human Environment. It was in 2022. Again, what I'm teaching you is good geographical writing, okay? So even if you're not necessarily doing this specification or this exam board, good geographical writing gets good marks in every single exam board, okay? So here's your question. Assess the following statement. The aim of reducing greenhouse gas emissions is the main reason why countries are developing renewable energy resources. So this is a classic agree with and disagree with. So we would define a word. I would go for renewable energies. Yep. I would have a paragraph that is yes and a paragraph that is no. So yes, the fight against climate change is incredibly important, and I would go through this. And then I would go no. And I'd go for, potentially making the UK more energy secure. We're buying less fossil fuels from foreign countries like Russia. It could be other factors as well, having a more diversified, getting energy from different sources and not just being reliant on one energy source. Okay, that's roughly how I would approach this question. So you should do this and have a go at doing it. Again, leave the question, leave your responses in the comment section. I'll try and give you a bit of advice. Okay, so here is your mark scheme. Feel free to go through it. Pause the video, have a look, compare this mark scheme to what you have produced. These are the points you could write about. And again, here is your AO3. The last thing I would say, again, are our key thoughts. 1 point per paragraph. connectives, case study, judgments. You cannot get the higher marks without judgments. And again, conclusion essential, introduction optional. All right, the last thing I would point you to this. This is a cheat sheet that I've put together that is freely available online. You could take a print screen of it now, or you could scan the QR code to download it for free. But this just gives you the structure of what you could, structure of how to respond to either describe questions, explain questions, or evaluate questions. I would sit with a past paper and I'd have this sheet next to me and I'd have a practice, and I think that would be really, really good use of your time. Okay, guys, I hope you found this useful. Give me any feedback in the comment section. Like and subscribe, as I'll be making more kind of exam masterclass videos as we move forward. The next one I'm going to be making is describing graphs, and I've made explain already. So take care, good luck in your GCSEs, and I'll see you in a bit.